So the goals for today, it is basically know what's the best location for your garden. That's where we're gonna start from, and trying to select, like real estate, you know, we always say location, location, location are the three most important. When there is a lot of things to consider when you're thinking about a garden, especially for the space, and we're gonna talk a little bit about it. So that helps you to choose the best location for your garden. Also, we're gonna be talking about how to prepare the soil to grow these vegetables here in the desert. Like somebody was asking early, caliche is a big problem. The lack of nutrients into the soil is a big problem. We live on a desert, so there is not a lot of organic matter into our soil. So we need to be able to provide that organic matter to our soils in order to grow these vegetables. We're also gonna be talking about choosing the right plants every season, because I see a lot of the time people getting frustrated, telling me in the summer, Eric, I planted all these lettuce and spinach in the summer and nothing really grew. And I'm like, yeah, and that is because those are plants that really like the winter better, you know? They don't really do, we are living in the desert, and the desert has really extreme weather. We have really hot summers, we have really cold winters. So we need to, one of the things that I learned from growing food in the desert is a lot about timing, the right timing, when to plant and what to plant. So we're gonna talk about it as well. We're gonna talk about water too, because this is a very important thing. In the summer, we are like, we know that our plants are gonna require some more water, but we're not gonna talk about how much water we can use, but how much water we can save doing different techniques to irrigate our plants. So we're gonna be sharing some techniques that are gonna help you reduce your water so you don't become growing like the famous $50 tomato, you know? You put a lot of water into it, and by the end of the season, you pay more water on that tomato than actually buying a dozen of tomatoes in the organic store, right? So we gotta make sure that we pay attention. Plus, we're in the desert, so it's only responsible for us to always be thinking about ways to save water. We're gonna talk a little quick also about container gardening. I'm gonna provide you with some resources so you know a little bit more about this great technique that works really good for some people, especially with people that has limited space. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. So right now, our BJ Grace is gonna share with us a small video. It's only about 2 minutes long about location. So let's take a look at it.
Choosing the right location is one of the most important things in having a successful vegetable garden. You need to consider a few things: where the sun is throughout the seasons, how rainwater flows in your yard, where the utilities are, accessibility to the garden, and if there are contaminated areas. Your garden needs 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day. Other things to consider before you choose a garden location: utilities. Know where all the utilities come in and where they leave the house. Call the city to mark your services. Contamination and problem plants. Know the history of the land. Avoid areas where oil, solvents, paint, chemicals may have been spilled. Also avoid gardening near oleander, salt, cedar, and eucalyptus. Water flow. Notice how the water flows in your yard when it rains and try to capture that water. Accessibility. Place a garden where you can see it every day and also close to a water spigot. Fencing. Consider fencing and barriers for animals, pet gophers, etc., and high winds. Given all these considerations, we decided to place the garden in the additional backyard of this home. It will get shade during hot summer months from the big shade trees on the west side, and we placed it far enough from the southern fence to get the winter sunlight. It also has a water source close by. Your garden beds shouldn't be wider than 3 feet and have pathways at least 2 feet wide so that you can reach your plants without stepping inside the garden beds. In order to have choosing the right location is one of the most important things in having a successful vegetable garden.
So,
Consider.
thank you, Grace. So that was a small video about location. And I'm going to go ahead and show you something else that I created to help you kind of visualize it on a different way. Here it is. I created, let me see. Yeah, here. All right, so every time you go outside into your garden, it is really important for you to locate yourself and locate where the cardinal directions are. And this is a great opportunity to sketch on your piece of paper your house and where north is located at. This is going to be really important because it's going to tell us what the sun is going to be doing through the year, and especially right now we are in between the spring and the summer. We haven't reached the hottest time of the year, so we know that the sun is coming on the east side and going pretty much right above the house that we have on that picture, and is setting on the west all the way down on the other side of the house. Pretty much right now, this time of the year, we don't really have to worry too much about sun exposure with our plants. Our plants are gonna, in the video, they talk about 6 to 8 hours. I honestly say with 4 hours that you get with this super hot sun, 4 to 6 hours, you got plenty of that. Its sun is so strong here that no matter where you put it, even in the east side or even in the back of the house, you're gonna get some sun in those plants. The issue becomes in the winter time. If you look at the arc that says winter, which is this blue one, is really low on the horizon on the south end. So if you, let's say, choose a location on the back, on the north, then you're not gonna get, if you put it behind your house, you're not gonna get any sun on the winter. So those are very important things to consider. And let's say that we have right there a line that goes inside of your house, and that is your gas line. So you don't wanna be digging in that area. You wanna make sure that you call your service. If you don't know where your lines are in your house, to call the people. I think is, I don't know if somebody wants to put it on the chat. I don't remember exactly the number, but they can come and do it for you for free. Let's say the water is here. So we don't wanna do any digging around there. Now we know what is the hottest time of the year. Is gonna be on the summer around between 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., right where that arrow is. It's gonna be blasting on the west side of our house. And that is where the hottest part of the house is going to be. We can do certain things when we take decisions, like for example, planting a tree on the west side of the house. A shade tree is one of the best decisions that we can do because we know that that tree is gonna provide that nice cooling shade to the west side of the house, which is going to also help us with the bills. We're not gonna have to pay so much on cooling because that tree is doing it for us. It's a great way to start thinking about design. Also, let's say we have a tree on the back north. Well, maybe putting our summer garden back here will be a better idea. So that way our garden, it is shaded by that tree on the west side. So when the time comes in the summer that the sun gets super hot and it's going to get our plants and our soil really dry, well, we can put our garden bed or our containers right there on the east side of our trees. So the trees protect that really hot time of the day, which is usually between 1 and 4 p.m. So finding shade, just a really awesome time. So this is a really easy way that is going to help us make decisions of location, because the sun pattern is something that is never going to change. We can move things around, but we're not going to be able to move the sun around. The sun is always going to do the same year after year, right? So once we have our location, then we're going to be able to start working with the next step, which is going to be the soil. Another thing that I found really useful is to divide or design by different zones. And what I mean by zones is the areas that get the most traffic. For example, in this example right here, we got zone 1, which is right side of the house on the back and the front. And then there is a path that goes into a shed right there, which that means basically is that area, it is the area that gets the most foot traffic. So it makes the most sense to make the gardens that require the most attention inside of that area. That way we do less work. We don't want to do our vegetable garden in zone 3 or zone 4, which is going to require more work for us. And in the long run, things are going to tend to fail because those are areas that we don't visit that often. So that's another thing to think about. How can we do our design divided by different zones? Where do we spend the most time, folks? Where do we like to go? Like, so we don't want to have maybe the fruit trees right in front of our house. I mean, right in front of our pathway. Maybe we want to put the fruit trees a little bit more back because we only going to get fruit from those trees once a year. But if we have a vegetable garden that is very intensive, we might want to have it close to us. So we get to look at it very often, pretty much every day, and pay attention to what is happening so we can respond to it in an efficient way. So dividing your design by zones might be a good idea to think about. It doesn't have to be so complex. If you live on a small area, maybe zone 5 is something like your water meter or your electrical meter, things that you don't really visit that often. This is one of my favorite quotes because gardening, it is an active conversation with nature. It is very important to integrate into the design useful and edible plants and wildlife habitat in a low maintenance way. I just want to go back to this. If you notice the vegetable garden right here, it is on the back of the house. You can see in zone 1. But it's very important not only to focus on those vegetables, you know, think about also edible desert edibles, you know, things that you can grow that requires very little maintenance, such as prickle pear cactus that provide good fruit, provide cactus pad you can eat, choyas that can provide a nice fencing, but also provide us those choya buds that are really high on calcium, and all these different options that we have here in the desert that require very little maintenance. Also fruit trees. Some people like, we got the options here in Tucson to grow wonderful fruit trees. For example, one of my favorite is the desert goldfish. It is wonderful, it produces a lot. We can grow citrus as well and start thinking about integrating into our designs and not only focus on the garden, but in the different ways that we can also grow edibles inside of our yard. All right, so we're moving on. I'm going to share right now a video. Grace is gonna help me to share a video about digging and preparing the soil for your garden. And this is going to show you a little bit about how to deal with caliche. You might not be happy when you see the way you deal with it, but it is one of the, it is pretty much the only way to do it if you're gonna start thinking about growing in the ground. Thank you, Grace. If you wanna play it for us.
In order to have a successful garden bed, we need to dig deep and add nutrient-rich soil. We have a texture activity that can help figure out what type of soil you have. Get a glass jar, 1 cup of soil, shake contents and let it settle for 24 hours. Sand particles sink at the bottom of the jar, silt in the middle, and clay floats on top. The soil needs to be rich in nutrients, aerated, and alive. Before you start digging, wet the soil deeply before you dig in there. If you're using a shovel, be mindful of your back and bend your knees. When you're using a pick, be aware to bend your knees and to apply all the weight of your body when you pick. We also have in our soils at different depths caliche. When digging your garden, it feels like concrete. It is recommended to rent a jackhammer if you find caliche. It can save your back from hard work. Compost is decomposed organic materials. You can add wet materials such as manure, food scraps, coffee grounds, and dry materials, leaves, straw, cardboard, napkins, etc. Mix them well and add water. You can make compost at home or you can purchase it. When we prepare a garden bed in Tucson, we have to dig at least 2 feet deep. We take all the soil and mix it with 50% compost and 50% of the native soil sifted to remove big rocks. You can add the sifted soil and compost until the garden bed is full. Continue enriching the soil. Add 4 inches of compost after every season to add nutrients. Pile up the leftover soil to form berms and walkways around your planting bed, making the bed lower and sunken to allow for collection of water. Because we live in a hot and arid desert, water conservation.
All right. Thank you again, Grace, for showing us that video. As you notice, one of the recommendations when we start thinking about digging a garden in our backyard, we, because the soils here in the desert are highly compacted, and that is a big enemy of roots, we recommend to dig at least, okay, the video says 2 feet, you know, like every time I start, like when I get to 1.5 feet, I'm like, all right, this is good enough. You know, if you can, and if you have the back, if you have the muscle, if you have great neighbors or really strong friends, you know, yes, go 2 feet, go 3 feet if you can, the more the better. But, you know, you just got to remember that some of the roots of the plant really need that room to grow, you know. So what happens over and over again, if people only digs about 5 inches and they're like, all right, that was good enough, then what's going to happen is just the plant is going to start growing at the beginning, and then you're going to have the plant collapsing. It's because it cannot penetrate that compacted soil. So yeah, you have to dig. If you find that caliche, the best way to do it is through using a jackhammer. You can rent one probably at one of those hardware stores like Home Depot, and that's pretty much the best way. Same thing is with trees. You want to plant a fruit tree, and if you find caliche, you need to jackhammer it out. Get it all out of there and do your 2 feet at least, filling in with good soil. But one of the things that is important to mention, it is that the desert soil has some nutrients. We're not gonna get completely rid of it. What we do is we sift it. We use a sifter, we get all the rocks out, and we get with that fine soil from the desert. It's mostly silt, mostly clay in some places. That dirt, we're gonna mix it 50% sifted soil and 50% compost. So we mix it together and we put it back into that hole that we dug out. Then we do a berm on the low side of the garden, so if the rainwater starts traveling, it hits the berm and stays in our garden. This is really important because there is nothing better than rainwater for our plants. When the monsoon season comes, we want to get most of that water. That's why in the desert, we don't really do mounds, gardens, because that rainwater washes out. We got very little rain, so we got to get the most out of it. So we do a sunken garden, and we raise our paths. So we walk on the paths that are raised above the garden, and then the water will collect into the plants in the garden. This is something really important to consider if you're thinking about an in-ground garden. It's very important, you know, once you, a lot of the people thinks about soil on a way that it's just a place where the plant lives, you know, but really the soil is a living thing, and we got to think about it, and especially when we add fertilizers or when we are doing, if you look at conventional agriculture right now and you take a look at the fields, don't go too far, you know, go through Marana or go through all those fields, and seriously, you look at that soil and it looks dead, you know. That's why farmers right now are having a really hard time just buying fertilizers to feed those plants. If you're always thinking about feeding your plant instead of feeding your soil, you're gonna end up in a really bad consumption loop. The soil, you need to feed the microbiology into the soil, and then that microbiology is going to feed your plants. All that life into the soil, it is what sustains the life in your plants. Good, healthy plants are going to be fed by those microorganisms. And soil is such an amazing thing. So every time we think about it, we need to figure out ways, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about it in the next video about how can we ourselves maintain the life in our soils, because you're gonna break down soil into your backyard, let's say. So you gotta start thinking that, yeah, that was soil that was only suitable for some maybe weeds or some native trees. But if you wanna grow vegetables, it doesn't really contain the microbiology that it needs in order to sustain it. So you need to start building that. The compost, adding the compost is the first step. A lot of people, when they want to do a garden, what they do is they yank all of their plants from the soil and then dig it all out and do it. So what you're doing by digging all those things out from your garden, you are destroying the life that you're building already, in all the microbiology into the soil. So it's really important to think about it. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about it on our next video. I'm just want to open up really quick for any question.
There are two main planting seasons in Tucson, cool and hot. As the weather starts to cool down in mid-late October, plant your cool season garden, which includes leafy greens, root veggies, and herbs. After the last danger of frost, early March, plant your warm season garden, which includes fruiting crops like tomatoes, melons, squash, and peppers. You can also plant heat-loving plants in July through August with the monsoon rains. Always look for varieties that have short days to harvest or extend your season by starting plants inside or in a greenhouse. Consult local gardeners, farmers at the farmers market, local seed sources, and planting guides to find the best varieties for our region. To avoid disease and pest infestations, it's best to encourage diversity of plants and beneficial insects by rotating crops and interplanting with flowers and herbs. Prepare to plant by amending garden beds, organizing seeds and plants, and getting out your planning notebook. Try drawing or laying out plants and seeds before you plant, so you can think about the different growing needs of each. You can maximize a space by planting intensively in a zigzag pattern or in a block of small plants. Be sure to write down what variety and when you planted. In our climate, we never plant on hills or mounds, but rather make furrows or basins for plants to concentrate water. Plant seedlings during the cool part of the day and protect from harsh conditions for the first week. Dig a hole. Gently remove the pot and tuck into the soil. Be sure there are no air pockets around the plant's roots. If your seeds are new, just plant one seed per plant, otherwise you could spend a lot of time thinning. Very small seeds can be scattered and lightly covered. Be sure to space them so they'll not be crowded as mature plants. Water the soil surface for the first week until seeds break their seed coats, then begin deep watering. Depending on conditions, vegetables may take longer to be ready to harvest than the seed packet said and may look different than what you see in the store. Be sure to keep an eye on them as they begin to ripen and mature. Be sure to harvest summer squash and cucumbers when they are small and tender, 6 to 8 inches. Leafy greens and lettuce can be continually harvested by cutting the large leaves and leaving the young leaves to grow. You can check root crops like carrots and beets by feeling the top of the root with your finger under the soil, and check the diameter before you pull it out. Broccoli heads will continue to get larger for a few days. Harvest before the individual buds begin to open into their yellow flowers. Try to check your garden every day to observe plant growth. Check with your finger that the soil is moist but not soggy. Cover the soil surface with mulch like straw or alfalfa. A few times per season, you may need to protect your garden from extreme heat or cold. Shade cloth is used for heat protection. Agrobond is used for frost protection and used when temperatures are in the 30s. Compost, worm castings, or compost teas can be added periodically to increase nutrients and soil life. Look under the leaves for any insects. Some will try to eat your plants and some will help your garden by pollinating and breaking down organic materials. If you see an insect, observe if it is damaging your plant. Take a picture or catch one to identify it in books, on the internet, or with other gardeners. If it is a pest insect, look up the recommended organic remedy. Squishing the pest, knocking them off with water, or spraying them with mild soapy water will work. Use 1 tablespoon mild liquid dish soap to 1 gallon water.
All right. Thank you, Grace, for sharing that video. And that was about planting. One of the things I want to share with you really quick on this presentation, it's well, we're in the summer almost, really. So things are getting really hot. So it's really important to think about the different species that you can plant in this season. For that, we have created a planting guide that is going to help you navigate what plants are best for this time and when you can start them, what time of the year. So for example, if you look at this slide, you can see that we are mid-May, April to mid-May. We can grow cucumber, gourds, melons, okra, the cucurbits, the squash, all those things. This is the good time to do it. You notice it's getting already hot for tomatoes if you're gonna do it from seed. So tomatoes usually are from a mid-March, because what happens with tomatoes is if you grow them from seed really late, it gets so hot, you know, at the end of June here, that some of those tomatoes, the pollen on the flower will burn and it won't produce fruit. So the plant will actually stay alive, but it won't be producing fruit. So when you go out to buy some seeds, if you need to, please make sure that at least you take a look at the different things that a seed has to tell you, such as if it's organic or not, if it has, if it's adequate for this climate. One of the things I like to do also is to look at the days to harvest. If I have 2 types of broccoli, for example, and one says harvest at 60 days and the other one says harvest at 40 days, I will probably go for the one at 40 days because I will have food faster. So that's some of the things. Also, plant things really close to each other is very useful in the summer because it seems like plants really help each other to grow and shade each other. On the internet, you're going to find a lot of planting guides such as this one. Also, the one I show you, and I'm gonna be giving you a link to access this presentation if you ever need to. One of the things I like to mention, it is how important it is to think about plants when you are making your decisions, about plants helping each other out. For example, one thing that is very well known on the gardening world is that if you put basil around your tomatoes, the tomatoes will get better flavor. So, I mean, there is not for no reason that basil and tomatoes have been grown together for such a long time. And basil also being a very strong scented plant, it also repels insects. So why not? Let's plant it together. Things like peppers do really good in the summer. Eggplant does really good in the summer. Squash, cucumbers do really good in the summer. Marigold, it is also one of those plants that you put in your garden and it helps you repel certain types of pests. So when you are doing your design of your garden, and one of the things you can do is, for example, draw your square and then make a plan of where you're going to locate certain things. This thing can help you out for the future. You have what you planted, and then next year you can have a log and say what things were good, what things didn't work out, take some notes. Maybe the first season is not going to be your best season. I'm sorry, you know, but that's how it is usually most of the time. But I consider the best season in the way that you're going to learn the most, you know. I mean, you're never going to stop learning, that's for sure. But your first season is going to tell you a lot. Even if you start late on the season that we are right now, getting your soil ready at this point is going to get you ready for winter gardening, which is the best gardening in Tucson. That's where we can get all those leafy greens, broccoli. So you start working your soil right about now, you're going to be able to start ready for planting in October for all those wonderful leafy greens, broccoli, brassicas, kales, and carrots and beets and all those things. I wanted to show you this slide because it's something that I'm really passionate about too, is exploring different shapes of gardens. You know, you don't have to be all square-minded, a perfect rectangle. You know, you can go with circles. You can go, the ones on these pictures are called keyhole gardens, and what they do is to create less walking paths. So you walk in into the center of the keyhole and you can access everything around it, doing minimal movement, less walking, less work for you, and you increasing your growing space that way too. So think about, be creative when you're designing your garden. You can work around with what you already have around your space. It doesn't have to be all squares and rectangles. You can play around with different, there is a lot of ideas on the internet right now. So there's, for example, in the middle of the second picture is a spiral garden. So you increase your vertical space that way. So there's different ways to go about it. So yeah, get creative, have fun. Your seedlings, I want to show you, this is a seedling that looks really nice, healthy, good to go. It's a tomato plant. This is a Nichols tomato. It's a what we call a heirloom variety. What heirloom means is something that has been grown in this area for over 30 years or more. So it is well adapted to the heat of the desert. So I know when people want a tomato, they might want to get those really big tomatoes, but first of all, those are not adapted for our climate, so I wouldn't recommend it. Cherry tomatoes, smaller sizes do better in the desert. Good looking. If you find a seedling like this is too small. Don't get it yet. It's gonna be more susceptible for birds or other plants to eat it. These leaves are really yummy when they're young and tender, and then they start losing taste because the energy gets put on the upper leaves. Now, if you find a thing that looks like this, also do not get it. This is already past the prime. It's already flowering on the pot. This plant has a lot of stress. Look at that root system already coming down. So when you pull it out, it's going to cause some stress to the plant, and you're probably not going to have a good developing plant. Now, this is what you want to look for. Something like this, not something like this. So a plant that has developed just a couple leaves, maybe the second ones are underweight, it's a good looking plant. You can find seedlings with us in the same. Victor at the food bank has 1 inches apart to 12 inches apart. The next video that I'm gonna show you is about irrigation, and the irrigation right now comes with the perfect spacing between plants. So I'm gonna show it to you right now. And then we're gonna go back to the
Because
question.
we live in a hot and arid desert, water conservation is very important to us. A lot of times, we place the extra soil from the holes on the lower side of the garden beds to keep rainwater where the garden is. Irrigation system. First, connect all the pieces that are attached close to your water spigot. These are the hose splitter, mechanical timer, pressure reducer, and swivel adapter. Use Teflon tape so you don't get any leaks. After that, connect the polytubing and bury it at least 3 to 4 inches deep. Measure how long the polytubing needs to be to reach your garden beds. Use elbow connectors to direct the tubing toward the garden beds. Put a cap at the end of the line. Measure where you want the line and how long it should be. You need to have your line about 8 to 12 inches apart. If you have garden beds that are 3 feet wide, there is a space for 2 to 3 lines inside your garden bed. After that, punch holes in the polytube and connect the lines. And finally, bury the poly line where the pathway is, so you don't trip on it when you're walking there. Two main plantings. There are.
All right. That is just a very easy way to show you how easy it is to put together a irrigation system. I highly recommend to do irrigation systems because, especially here in the summer, if we forget 1 or 2 days without watering our garden, the chances that they will die are very high, because it just gets so hot that the plants need at least a little bit of water every day. And a timer will do it automatically for you. You don't have to, let me see. So here is a diagram that shows you the different parts of the irrigation system. Starts with the valve. There is a backflow preventer, a pressure regulator, because the pressure of the city water comes in such a high pressure that we need to lower it down to at least 20 psi, and you can buy these pieces are only between $5 to $10, and you can find them on any hardware store. The filter is important because the micro tubing that we will be putting on has very small emitters, and these emitters, the water comes with a lot of debris sometimes, and it could potentially get plugged. And then we just get the tubing adapter, then we got our poly hose, and then we plug in our irrigation, the 1/4 inch that comes with an emitter built into it every 6 inches, just like the one that the video was showing. The only part that is missing on this diagram is a timer. The timer is the first piece that goes in between the valve and the backflow preventer. And that timer, you can find something that works on batteries, and then you can program to water as long as you need to every day. For example, you can put it for 15 to 20 minutes every day. And I would suggest to always do it either really early in the morning or late in the afternoon. It really icks me when I go around and I see people watering in the middle of the day, because a lot of that water is going to get evaporated with the sun really quickly. So if we do it really early in the morning or late in the afternoon, the water will have better chance to sink into the soil and be absorbed by those roots. Some of the water saving techniques that I will recommend is also adding mulch. If you look at the picture on the slide, mulch is just organic matter. On that picture in particular is straw. You can use about 2 to 3 to 4 inches of straw around your plants. That's what's going to do. You're not exposing your soil to the sun directly. The sun is going to hit the straw, and the straw is going to protect that soil, also preventing evaporation from that soil, also adding organic matter as it breaks down. So finding a good source of mulch is really important, and putting a nice thick layer around your plants. If you go to any feed store, you can get all the remnants from the straw bales that fall down. Decide to do your garden, if you put it around, like I was saying at the beginning, next to a tree on the east side, then you'll have better sun protection, which is also going to translate on water saving. Appropriate irrigation. Water really early in the morning, late in the afternoon is the best time. Also, you can do other techniques. Somebody mentioned an olla earlier. It is, I'm gonna show you a picture of one soon. Those are different ways, but drip irrigation, I find it to be the most useful because especially in the summer, the water goes directly to the roots of the plant. If you water with your hose your tomatoes, the tomatoes don't like the water on their leaves. So just keep that in mind. So it is an investment at the beginning, but it's something that is gonna last you a couple years. And when you think about all the time saving that you're gonna get, it's completely worth it. So for a full complete system like the one you saw in the video, you're thinking about doing between $50 to $70 investment. It will definitely pay off. I love this little picture. It shows a rainwater harvesting system that goes into this low area, and after it collected all the rain on that cistern, it overflows into your garden. And this is what I really envision a garden to look like here in the desert. It's not only a lonely square in the middle of nowhere, but it is also a tree that provides shade. It is also some local herbs and edible weeds. You know, there is like weeds that we can eat as well. There are medicinal as well, like that. We make this wonderful pesto out of the wild mustard the other day. It was delicious. We didn't put any effort to grow it. A fruit tree there, some prickly pear, things that you're not going to give any attention, but it's going to provide habitat for pollinators. They're going to benefit your garden as well. And they're going to create life into the soil. You don't need to go out to buy mulch. This mesquite tree is going to provide you with the mulch you need. So you are creating multiple layers of garden in the same space. So think about it that way when you're creating your design. Just because we are kind of short on time, I'm going to briefly talk about container garden, but without showing you the video of how to make one. I'm going to invite you to see it afterwards if it's something that you're interested. At the food bank, we created 2 different videos, and one is how to make a self-watering container, also known as wicking beds, or how to make a self-watering container raised bed, okay? So those 2 videos, we're gonna pass you the link. You can find them in our YouTube channel. But I'm gonna briefly explain as well as we continue to move forward. This is a diagram of a self-watering container built out of a 5-gallon bucket, also known as wicking bed. So it is 1 bucket inside of each other. The one on the bottom has a water reservoir that has a wicking chamber. Say soil wicks water up to the plant. Think about it, when you put a piece of paper on the water, the moisture travels upwards. The same way with these containers. So what you do, you add the water on the top. If you look, there is a little arrow on top, says add water there. It's a PVC pipe where you add your water. It fills your water reservoir on the bottom, and there is an overflow hole somewhere. Then once the overflow starts showing, then you stop watering, and the moisture will travel upwards to those roots of the plant, keeping it really nice and moist in there. We love to grow on these ones because it's really easy way. We find these buckets in, for example, EG's is a great resource, or Khalil. You can buy these buckets for 50 cents to $1, and they're food grade. So you know that they didn't carry any paints or solvents in the past. You do have to fill these with potting soil. Potting soil instead of just dirt or compost like you will do in your garden, because potting soil will retain more moisture because it also contains coconut coir, perlite, and vermiculite. You can find also potting soil with us for $3 for the 5-gallon bucket. I'm gonna show you also, well, these are some considerations of things you can grow with the space. And before I go there, I wanna show you right here, self-watering container that I have. Like I said, it's just a bucket inside of a bucket. So it has this hole that we made. Hope everybody can see it, where we put a wicking basket that we get full with coconut coir. And then we get inside here, and then we have this right here. So we fill this with potting soil. We add the water through here, and then there is a little hole somewhere here, and the water will start coming through there. And that's when we stop watering. We got these ones for sale as well. We are selling them right now. We're asking a donation of $5, and it already comes full of potting soil, and it already comes with a plant. They're so cool. It comes with a tomato and a basil because they make a wonderful couple. And we're asking for $5, but if you can pay more so we can continue to build them, that would be great. And those ones you can contact directly, and you can pick them up here at Las Milpitas. We have still some available. Okay. So I'm gonna go back because I do see a lot of questions. Thank you all. Mint tolerates heat. Well, the mint that I have, sure it does. Right now it's thriving. Yeah, a mint, you gotta be careful with them. Once you find a place, once mint gets established, it takes over. So you gotta drink a lot of mint tea or whatever, mojito, whatever you like to do, Bob. But yeah, to keep it under control, because it takes over. If you want some starts, come and check, come and talk to me. I have a bunch of it right now. Yes, Emily also has some that is heat adapted, likes the shade, yes. And the olla also, I have an example of a homemade olla. Basically what it is a clay container. You can buy one for really expensive, or you can make your own. I went to the dollar store, got this clay pot. It needs to be unglazed. Glue them with silicone that it is plastic, silicone, non-toxic. You can use the one that is made for aquariums as well. That one works really good. And you block one of the holes, and then you pour the water from here, fill this with water, and the moisture will leak out as well. And then you put your plants around it. There's a lot of examples of ollas online. It's just a good way you can make this, because if you go to a store and want to buy one, you're gonna be between $20 to $30. They don't seem to work that great in the summer, to be honest, unless it's really big. So here's Eric's top tips. And I hope this works out. All right, yes. hope everybody grow what you like, people. I've seen people just growing things because somebody gave them the plant, you know, like, oh, I got this plant for free, and then it's just taking up a bunch of space. Like I see that with artichoke all the time. You know, artichoke is such a, it grows so big, it takes a whole bunch of space, produces a few artichokes, and people sometimes don't even like them. You know, end up giving them away. There's so much work to cook. So yeah, grow what you like. It is, yeah, think what you like, seriously what you're gonna eat, and focus on that, and diversify as well. Yeah, experiment with, okay, you want to grow cucumbers, and you really like cucumbers, but how about, no, instead of just trying that one, expand your horizon a little bit, and one season try to grow an Armenian one or a lemon one to see how they do amongst the ones that you're already growing. Eat what you grow. Yes, because believe it or not, I've seen so much food going to waste. People think gardens are like a botanical garden. No, you have those plants there to feed you, not necessarily to look at them all the time. It's like, oh, look, it's getting so big. Look at that squash, it's getting bigger and bigger. Yeah, and all of a sudden it tastes like crap. So don't let it go to that stage. Eat it when they're young and tender. Keep an eye on the things that are ripe, and eat them. That's what they're for. Unless you're gonna save some seed and you can let that one mature, but for the most part, eat what you grow. Do not only focus on the annuals, also grow perennials, things that will continue to be there for you. The desert has things like wolfberries that are delicious, hackberries. You can make great salsas with them. You can eat the mesquite beans, make flour. You can eat the green beans of the palo verde. They taste like edamame. You can eat choya buds. You can eat prickle pear cactus. Do it. Next one is, yeah, start at your back door. You don't have to go too far, you know, like you can put like a little pot on your window on your kitchen. It's a good way to start. The revolution starts at home. If you can, for some reason, because you have a landlord on your back, go to a community garden. Join us at Las Milpitas or the one who is in your neighborhood. If you have a lot of space, invite somebody to grow in your space. If you don't have the space, see if your neighbor that has a lot of space would like to do it. There is ways to go around it. So let's not think about the things that we don't have, but the things that we could potentially have. Make experiments and learn from your mistakes. Yes, you're gonna make mistakes, that's for sure. You're gonna kill a lot of plants, murder them, but that's how we learn. We're gonna learn a lot from our mistakes, so don't feel bad when you start making them. Enjoy what has happened rather than thinking what has happened. I see a lot of people going around in the community garden and, but look at that garden, it's so nice and mine is so bad. You know, it's like, well, maybe yours is a late bloomer, okay? But when everything else has died on that other one, yours is gonna be blooming. Just gotta stick on it, you know, don't lose your hope, keep doing it. Another one is sow more seeds than what you think you will need. You will find a use for them if they all do well. Sometimes people is like, oh, I only want one tomato, you know, and then they put all the hopes on that tomato, and that tomato doesn't do good, then you have no tomato. So grow a bunch of tomatoes, you know, some of them are gonna do better, so keep the ones that are doing better, and if they're taking too much space, reposition it somewhere else in the garden, donate it to a friend. I'm sure you'll find a use for them. Think of gardening as playtime, not work time. A lot of people find it as a chore, but you know, there is so many benefits about gardening. It's a therapy, it is physical exercise, it is relaxation, it is connection with nature, And if you think about it only like doing that chore, and if you're putting also at the end, the investment is usually at the beginning, the investment of time and effort. But once you establish your garden, really, if you're spending more than 1 to 2 hours a week working on your garden, you're doing something wrong. So think about that. Spend time with plants, just being out there. You don't have to do nothing, you know, just observing is the best way to learn from the plants. And yeah, don't forget to marvel at the whole process. So there is a link with a bunch of resources that I'm going to share, and maybe, do you remember, Grace, that resource list? Maybe we can just plug it in right here on the chat so people has access to those links.
Okay.
The resource list. And oh, Teresa, I'm glad you enjoyed the patty pan squash that you harvested yesterday. I'm glad you enjoyed the class. Okay, is everybody else has one last question? So I don't want to take much more of your time. I promise I will just gonna keep you until 10:30. All the videos are on YouTube. You can access them since a month ago. So you can go to the community food bank video. Right now, Grace is working on putting the links right here. And if you send me that photo, I can make a recommendation if you send me your address as well. And if you can help me with the description of what is it that you want to do, then maybe we can humbly give you an advice there. I think Victor's phone number is gonna come. Grace, if you don't mind putting what is that Google Drive link, I don't know if it's, yes. So for contacting Victor and for resources, all you have to do is send an email right here. And we'll be there to help you out. And like I mentioned, we have things like compost, seedlings, shade cloth, and what else? Free seeds, yeah. So pretty much everything you need to start your garden. If you ever need a tool, maybe we can think about borrowing you one. I don't have a jackhammer. Or a backhoe. I'd love to. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. It's been really nice. I hope this has been not a completely waste of your time and you enjoy. And so if you go to the YouTube channel of the Community Food Bank, there is a playlist, and then there is one for videos on Spanish, videos on English. All the videos that I show and more are gonna be found on that YouTube link. Is that cool? Everybody, thumbs up. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Stay safe, everybody. Happy gardening. My email is, well, you have my email. If you're here, you already got an email from me. I don't have to write down. And we'll have this class on YouTube. Oh, somebody thought it might be useful. All right, great. We'll do. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And it was a pleasure to be here with you all.